senior defense officials have just broken with decades of custom through a public letter that is now reverberating across Washington. A coalition of 38 current and former military commanders, among them 7 four-star generals, has formally declined to affirm Trump's authority as commander-in-chief in a joint statement released less than an hour ago. This is not a muted internal objection or a carefully phrased diplomatic disagreement. It is a historic public condemnation from leaders whose careers were grounded in the principle of never openly challenging civilian control. The fact that they chose to attach their names to it signals that conditions inside the Pentagon may have reached a critical threshold most Americans don't yet see. Make sure you subscribe now, because what's unfolding will dominate headlines for months, and you need clarity before partisan spin reshapes the narrative. So what sparked this remarkable action? According to the letter obtained by several news outlets at 3:47 p.m. Eastern today, these commanders point to a pattern over the last 14 months in which national security, they claim, has been subordinated to political interests, military readiness has been weakened, and the essential balance between civilian authority and the armed forces has been strained. The document highlights 3 specific episodes. First, an abrupt October order withdrawing from a key Middle East intelligence post without consulting theater commanders, reportedly issued just hours after a campaign rally where Trump criticized the deployment. Second, a January delay in authorizing a NATO joint training exercise, which multiple sources say was stalled because the presiding admiral had previously testified before Congress about budget gaps. Third, and most troubling, a February 9th directive instructing the Joint Chiefs to postpone emergency equipment shipments to a forward operating base until certain generals agreed to attend a White House event celebrating military strength. This is not about routine policy disputes or ordinary civil-military friction. It concerns the alleged use of operational command as leverage for political spectacle, a boundary these officers insist must never be crossed. If you're beginning to grasp the gravity of this, hit that like button. Here's the broader backdrop. Friction between Trump and senior military leaders has simmered since his first term, driven by disagreements over troop deployments, budget clashes with Pentagon officials, and repeated public criticism of generals viewed as insufficiently loyal. But sources close to the Joint Chiefs say everything shifted when a classified directive leaked on February 11th to the Senate Armed Services Committee revealed direct White House involvement in urgent operational decisions. The directive, dated February 9th and reportedly bearing Trump's signature, allegedly ordered a 72-hour delay on critical resupply approvals for a base facing an imminent threat until 3 specific 4-star commanders agreed to participate in a televised event praising administration defense policies. This was not framed as policy debate or routine command discussion. It was described as tying military safety to campaign optics. When members of the Senate Armed Services Committee reviewed the directive in a secure setting on February 12th, they reportedly concluded it crossed every imaginable red line. Senator Michael Thornton, a Republican from Virginia and former Marine officer, is said to have told colleagues he had never encountered anything comparable in 4 decades of service, and that silence would make them complicit in breaching constitutional duty. Senator Patricia Chen, the Democratic ranking member from California, reportedly called it the gravest misuse of commander-in-chief authority in modern times. By the end of a 4-hour emergency session, 11 senators from both parties had agreed to seek an immediate Pentagon Inspector General investigation. Before that request could even be formally submitted, however, the military leaders chose not to wait for internal processes. They went public. If you anticipated this moment, leave a comment. I read them all. The letter, signed by 38 current and retired commanders, was unveiled at a press conference at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. at 3:30 p.m. today. At the podium stood retired 4-star Army General Marcus Caldwell, former vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs, joined by retired Admiral Jennifer Hartley, who once led the Pacific Fleet, and retired Marine Lieutenant General Robert Hayes, who commanded forces across 3 combat theaters. General Caldwell, composed but visibly resolute, read the opening lines. "We, the undersigned, have devoted our lives to defending this nation and upholding the Constitution. We have served presidents of both parties and have never publicly challenged civilian leadership. But we cannot remain silent when decisions affecting the safety of American service members are subordinated to political calculations." The press room fell silent. Caldwell continued, emphasizing that civilian control of the military is sacred, but it carries a responsibility to act in the nation's interest, not for personal political gain. "When military operations are treated as bargaining tools for endorsements," he said, "that foundational compact is broken." That declaration sent shockwaves through the Pentagon and Capitol Hill. When a retired four-star general with nearly 4 decades of service publicly asserts that a sitting president has violated the civil-military covenant, it signals that the evidence is viewed as so serious that remaining silent would betray their oath. These are officers who built careers on avoiding politics, now risking reputations because they believe the alternative is watching the command structure erode in real time. History offers perspective. In April 1951, President Truman dismissed General Douglas MacArthur for insubordination during the Korean War after MacArthur publicly criticized presidential strategy. Military leaders ultimately accepted the decision because it reaffirmed civilian authority. In December 1993, Joint Chiefs Chairman Colin Powell expressed concerns to Congress about the implementation of the "don't ask, don't tell" policy under President Clinton. Yet he did so through proper channels and carried out the policy despite reservations. The difference now, according to today's signatories, is that the concern is not policy disagreement, but alleged manipulation of operations for political benefit. Even in October 2019, when Defense Secretary James Mattis resigned after a sudden Syria withdrawal decision, he refrained from publicly criticizing a sitting president for nearly 2 years. This time is different. The letter outlines 3 broad categories of concern: operational interference, politicization of personnel decisions, and marginalization of professional military advice. It alleges documented cases of White House directives altering time-sensitive missions based on perceived loyalty, promotion, and assignment considerations influenced by political alignment, and exclusion of senior commanders from key security discussions when their assessments conflicted with messaging goals. According to General Caldwell's account, on February 9th at 2:15 p.m., the White House Chief of Staff allegedly called the Pentagon, instructing the acting Deputy Secretary of Defense to pause authorizations from 3 forward operating bases. When asked why, the response reportedly suggested commanders needed to demonstrate stronger alignment with administration priorities. 2 hours later, those same base commanders were invited by a White House political advisor to join a televised event praising defense policies. The implied message was unmistakable: provide visible support and delays would be resolved, refuse and risk operational setbacks. For many observers, the larger concern transcends one directive. If military approvals can be delayed pending political endorsements, defense decisions risk becoming tools of campaign strategy. That precedent, once set, would blur the line between legitimate civilian control and political coercion. Congressional Republicans now face a profound dilemma: defend the president amid these allegations or respond to 38 respected military leaders' warning of compromised national security. Either the claims are accurate, implying a grave breach of duty, or dozens of decorated officers are fabricating a coordinated falsehood at enormous personal cost. Constitutional scholars have described the situation as the most serious civil-military strain in decades. Experts argue that while the president holds broad authority as commander-in-chief, that authority exists to advance national security, not to secure political loyalty. Former officials have noted that if operational delays were used to extract endorsements, such actions could potentially violate statutes prohibiting the use of government resources for campaign purposes. Even conservative legal voices have acknowledged that leveraging military discretion for partisan advantage would cross a constitutional boundary. Pentagon sources suggest this public letter may represent only part of a wider concern. Several additional active duty flag officers reportedly wished to sign, but were advised that doing so could breach Department of Defense regulations on political activity. That means others may share these worries, but remain constrained from speaking publicly. Discussions among senior leaders about how to address perceived politicization have reportedly occurred for months, weighing private meetings, classified testimony, or internal appeals before concluding that transparency was the only path to accountability. Admiral Hartley revealed that one of the bases affected by authorization delays faced increased hostile fire on February 11th and 12th. While no direct causal link was established, enhanced defensive systems requested by the commander were part of the delayed package and were not in place during the attack. 3 service members were wounded, and communications infrastructure was damaged. For critics, this underscores that the debate is not abstract. It concerns real risks faced by troops. Politically, the impact is immediate and profound. A formal public statement from 38 military leaders asserting that national security was subordinated to politics carries immense symbolic weight. It may embolden others to speak out and provide political cover for lawmakers hesitant to criticize. Meanwhile, service members observing former commanders voice such claims may experience declining morale and trust if they believe operational safety could be influenced by political considerations. The White House response, delivered on Truth Social shortly after 4:23 p.m., focused on condemning the signatories rather than addressing the directive's substance, calling them embittered and politically motivated. Critics argue that absent factual rebuttal or document release, such responses may deepen concerns rather than dispel them. Ultimately, this controversy is about more than one president or one directive. It raises fundamental questions about whether the commander-in-chief's authority has meaningful constraints and whether military command can be insulated from political bargaining. 38 leaders with decades of combined service have declared that a core principle of American governance may have been compromised. If unaddressed, some warn it could set a precedent affecting future administrations, promotions, operational decisions, and global perceptions of U.S. military credibility. As lawmakers review the letter and the classified materials, and as military families watch for accountability, the next 72 hours could prove decisive. What unfolds may determine whether institutional checks on presidential power remain intact or whether military authority risks becoming another arena for partisan conflict. The allegations are now public. The signatories have spoken. The question is whether Washington will respond with transparency and oversight, or whether this moment will pass without consequence, redefining the boundaries of civilian control for generations to come.